Oh, okay, perfect, awesome. So we're in the era where it is so important to, respect and understand the multifaceted aspects of female leadership, and nothing more exciting than kicking off today. Again, with kicking off this panel. So I would go ahead and introduce, if you each want to individually introduce yourselves. I know you just said it, but let's kick off with name, where you're at today, and then what is the most recent TV show you've watched, just for fun.
Hi, my name is Katie Segall, and I lead product marketing for Samsung Mobile. And I am so excited to see so many familiar faces in the audience today. It's also very nerve-wracking too. So, gosh, the last TV show that I watched for fun, we are currently watching The Citadel on Amazon Prime. So far, quite the clip.
Hi there, Sarah Johnston. I am the head of digital partnerships and social media at MoneyGram International. The most recent TV show, HGTV House Hunter International. I don't know why it's always on in my house, so I'd have to say that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Ginny Hundley. I'm the senior manager of paid and owned communications at Southwest Airlines. I've been there about 7 years, and the last TV, I'm embarrassed to say what the last TV show I watched was, but it's called Paranormal Caught on Camera. If anyone is interested, it's on the Travel Channel.
Hi there. I'm Whitney Magnuson, Senior Director of Social Marketing at Northwestern Mutual. So I lead our teams that do owned and earned media, influencers, that sort of thing. So I'm a nerd, first of all. And so my current TV show is not an exciting one. I probably should turn on House Hunters, but it's called The Days, and it's about the Fukushima nuclear disaster. So, yeah, uplifting.
Just some light TV watching to start off the day. Well, I have to say that kind of looking at these titles, I don't think these come straight out of college. They're not something you can just pick up, with a degree and walk into an office and get those titles. So it obviously took a lot of work and experience. And I think that looking at, careers over the past, I don't think there's necessarily a trajectory of no longer just climbing the ladder, so to speak. I think that looking at, immersive and diverse experiences can really help navigate careers. So would love to just kind of hear a little bit more about your backgrounds and what got you to where you are today. Whitney, I'll let you start.
Yeah. So first, a poll of the room. Who here is doing what you thought you were going to be doing when you were 22? Like 3 hands have gone up. So I think that's really normal. And when I look back at my career, I'm very cognizant that the type of work that I'm doing now didn't exist then, because like Facebook was launched when I was in college. And so to try and do those types of things, there just wasn't a vision of it. And so a lot of my career has been about adapting and seeing how things fit and then moving along. So I started in PR, working for an agency, said, this doesn't quite feel right. So I took my parents' advice. I don't know if that was a good idea. Went to law school and actually was an attorney for a while. And while I really enjoyed law school, I didn't love the practice of law. And so then I pivoted again into entrepreneurship. And then after, I managed to have a successful run in entrepreneurship, sold my share of my company, pivoted into digital marketing. And so I think those pivots that, we often see as like, oh, if I take a pivot in my career, am I derailing things? Am I, kind of going, am I going to look less attractive to employers? Has actually been a real benefit to me. And I feel like, kind of rolling with that, knowing that no one's path these days is usually truly linear. There are going to be jumps from company to company. In most cases, there are going to be jumps from one position to maybe another function in a lot of cases. I think that's really become the norm and something to encourage. So like when I talk to my recent grads, my interns, I say, don't be weary of the things that may come your way. Just be ready for opportunities, even if it's not the opportunity that you were maybe picturing in your mind. Do you guys agree with that?
I'll also say that I graduated in PR. And when I finished school, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I had a minor in journalism, and also, oh my gosh, what did I do? I don't want to be like a beat reporter. it was a much different time. I won't date myself entirely, but I've been now in this business for upwards of 25 years ish. So I think to echo what you said, I mean, my career has evolved substantially. I've done a lot of time at different agencies, small agencies, large agencies, medium agencies, worked on a lot of different types of clients. Went client side for a while, went back to agency, and I've found my home at Southwest. But what I am doing now, and especially now taking over own communications, I never saw myself doing that, to be honest. But I think that it's just been such a great evolution, and I love learning new things. I think that just continuing to grow and be adaptable. I think to echo what you said, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, if I could give any counsel, it's focus on these skills that you're building, not necessarily the titles or even the industry that you're in. For me, I grew up in food CPG marketing. I never thought I was going to be in tech. If you told me 5 years ago I'd be leading mobile product marketing for Samsung, I'd be like, no, no, thank you, but no. But the opportunity came up, and looking at the skill set that I had built over the years in brand and consumer marketing, it made sense. And so I was able to move from pretty deep experience in food over to a completely different kind of chip at Samsung. And so as you think about what you're getting out of each experience, that's what's important as you build your career now. And when you said that you were in college when Facebook came out, like, okay, thank you. I feel even older now.
It didn't come out of my school that year, but it came out at someone's school. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I agree with everything that's been said here. I started in advertising, went to a PR agency where I did paid media and PR and influencer. So I got to have kind of line of sight into all of those things. Went client side from there on the paid media side, back to agency side for a while, and now client side again. So I've been jumping around different industries, but all kind of within the advertising marketing sphere. And I think that there's so many skills that are applicable to different industries, different job titles, different, from paid social to influencer to affiliates, there's so many skills that transfer. And I think it's really important to just always be open to learning, looking for new opportunities, and that you'll find your way if you're, looking at what's really important to you and what you're passionate about.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that a lot of people are going to, take that under consideration and know that it's okay to move around and to try new things. And regardless of where you go, you're going to get great experience. And as you kind of have jumped from, job to job, chip to chip, let's say, have you taken your own personal brand you've carried with you, through authentically becoming a leader and stay true to who you are? Ginny, I know in our earlier conversations, we've talked about being fearlessly authentic. Would just love to hear more about what that means to you and then have others chime in as well.
Sure. Well, I think like a lot of companies, we at Southwest really embrace authors that we like, people, folks that we want to emulate so that we can be better leaders. Brene Brown is a huge influence, I think, for myself personally. I'm a little bit of a fangirl over Brene. But there's another author named Kim Scott that wrote Radical Candor, and part of that is really trying to be fearlessly authentic. And I think that it's a challenge every day. And I think especially in an environment like Southwest, I don't know if anyone's, hugely familiar with it, but we have a phenomenal culture. Everyone is very nice, very kind, very sweet, loving. And I think that sometimes we struggle with really being fearlessly authentic and having direct conversations. And I think as leaders, our responsibility to the people that work for us and with us is to do that, and to have those direct conversations, and even when they're hard. And I would say, one of the things that Amelia and I talked about is, it's a little early, to get really super radically candid, but I'll say, I think that being a woman leader today, I think there are still struggles that we face. And, I think that being direct is an example of that. I think, I've encountered several different instances where, if I'm being radically candid and I'm being fearlessly authentic and I'm sharing something as a woman, a lot of times it's considered, well, but you're usually so nice, but you're usually so sweet. But I mean, like, that's kind of bitchy, but when my counterparts do it, who are male, they're being direct, they're being authoritative, they're, doing what they're supposed to do as leaders. So, I think that it's definitely a dynamic as women that we have to navigate, I think, in a little bit of a different way. And, just make sure that we're staying true to ourselves and our team and our cohorts that we work with to do that, even when it's uncomfortable. Anyone else have comments on being direct or any kind of challenges that you've experienced, through effective communication, kind of how it comes across when you feel like you've been overly direct and it hasn't been received well?
Well, I'll say I have gotten, since I was, first starting out in my career, the feedback of like, you can come across a little bit intense. And I've always wondered, is that feedback that men also get, right? And I think it's just, for me, I'll say it maybe in a different way than being radically candid, is just being transparent. I found so much value in sharing with my teams over the years the why behind certain decisions. And sometimes the why is because this other executive wants it to happen, so we just got to do it, right? But like sometimes just saying those things can help build the camaraderie of like, we're all in the same boat, we're all working towards the same goals. So, I think transparency has led me to when I can be more direct and when I maybe can pull back a little bit more. But just knowing that whenever we are able to share information more broadly, the result is almost always positive.
And I also feel like as women, and you can pull articles and kind of see the research behind it, but there's a sensibility that when we reach out via email, we're often, oh, hi, just checking in, or I'm sorry, but have you done any tactics or had strategies to purposefully or mindfully remove certain language from email?
I know I have. And just like you said, I think, especially if it's a conversation that you maybe isn't going to be pleasant, or if someone obviously hasn't given you something that they should have, or any situation like that, you do come out saying, sorry, maybe sorry to bother you, but you said you were going to get this, or where is this? So I think I make a note in my mind to always I remove some exclamation points sometimes. I remove the sorry. So there are words that sometimes as I'm typing, I'll say, actually, no, I'm not sorry. This was supposed to come through, and that I'm not sorry to ask for it. So those keywords that you mentioned, I think I am very mindful of, just to keep in the back of my head when I am writing some of those harder emails. I also think, on the topic of having hard conversations, yes, it's hard, and I don't know how much harder it is as a woman versus a man. It may be hard for some guys too. But I think that having that relationship with your team and making sure that they feel valued and they know that you're coming from a place of, hey, I want us both to succeed, and it's nothing, I'm not coming personally for you, but here's what would be successful versus here's what happened. So in the back of my head, I'm really trying to make sure they know this is what you did well, here's what it should have looked like, how can we fix it together? So it can be constructive criticism, and it still can be very direct, but I try to balance it, especially in a virtual world where a lot of times you might not have as close of a relationship with the people that you're working with. You don't get to see them in the coffee room and say, great job on this, and how are you? So just making sure that I'm building that into kind of those conversations.
Yeah, I think that big learning for me is just you're not doing anyone any favors by being indirect or by softening language. You're not helping people understand your true intent, and you're not helping yourself stand up as a leader. So I definitely have worked to remove the sorries, and keep them for when you really need them, when you really need need to have those. And when you're giving feedback, you're not helping the other person if you're, oh, hey, by the way, you might just want to consider in these other circumstances. Like, no, here's the feedback. Here's how I'm going to help you. Here are the things that should be done differently going forward. And as a woman, as a mom, I don't have time to not be direct. I don't have time for you to not understand my intent. And as we're leading our teams, we're there to defend our teams. So as I look at the people that are behind me, my job is to make sure that they're empowered to do their jobs. And that means clearing roadblocks. And I can't do that if I'm not being direct. So I don't know if that's hurt me in my career or not, but so far, hopefully I'm doing okay.
No, I think that, I mean, being direct, and I always think that feedback is a gift, regardless of how it's received. So I think that you guys are taking the right approach. From communication and emails, as jobs have continued to shift to hybrid or fully remote, how have you effectively managed to keep collaboration within a virtual world? And I mean, with Sarah, I know you manage international teams. Has it made it easier? Has it made it tougher? How do you kind of stay on top of everyone being 100% remote or hybrid or virtual?
Yeah, no, great question. I think it's relevant to everyone in the room. So for MoneyGram, we have an interesting scenario where people can do all three. So we have people who go in all the time. We have hybrid. We also have fully remote workers. And like you mentioned, I mean, my direct team is in Dallas, New York, California, but also across Europe, Brazil, Hong Kong. So a lot of time zones, a lot of different places. So even if we were all in the office, it's very rare we would all get in a room together. That said, I think that we have found a kind of a really good way to approach, especially the onboarding, I think can be especially hard in a virtual world. So we schedule one-on-ones across the company. So not just within our direct teams, but other disciplines. So people kind of get a sense of community, who they're working with, not just within their day-to-day, but who am I emailing? Who's on these? Who's this affecting? So that's been really helpful. Also, where we're able to, getting to have our new hires come into the office a few months into their job start, I think has been really helpful just to sit down, have that face-to-face when you're able to, and to bridge any gaps that you haven't already figured out virtually, to be able to say, how are you? What do you do for fun? Some of the conversations that don't naturally happen on calls as much. And then from kind of a day-to-day basis with my team, we have weekly calls. We make sure we're super aligned on the priorities for the week, kind of open the floor to questions. Again, just making sure that they're comfortable and feel like they have the guidance and the resources they need. I would also say, and this is not mandatory by any means, but I always try to encourage having the camera on during meetings. You know, I think that it really shows you're paying attention. I think it's a sign of respect. I also think it helps with some of those verbal cues that you miss whenever or nonverbal cues when you're on calls. So right now we're all nodding along, but if you don't have a camera on and there's silence, does that mean you did a great job? Everyone completely understands you, or do they have no idea what you're talking about? So I always appreciate having the camera on, and I think that actually goes a really long way just in understanding if everyone's tracking on the same page or if there's something that you need to explain further. Also, I think something that comes up pretty often is, are people more productive at home or online or in person? And I don't have the answer to the question, but I think that something that stands out to me is it really depends on the person. And I think that's so important nowadays, especially in hiring, that you're looking for certain skill sets, but also you're looking for people who are self-starters and passionate about what they're doing, because at the end of the day, I feel like that's something that can't be taught. It's really comes down to finding the right person who's going to be productive and want to contribute. So that's something that I think is especially top of mind nowadays.
If I could just add to that. So I'm fully remote, stayed fully remote, post pandemic. Our headquarters are in Milwaukee. And where I find actually managing my team, I've got millennials and Gen Z. They're cool. They're like, yeah, I don't have to come into the office. Awesome. But where I find it is more challenging sometimes, it's actually managing up and how we can make sure that not just the team that knows what they're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day and feel very comfortable in that remote environment, but also the people that maybe did not grow up in that remote or hybrid workspace are getting what they need from me to place my team in a position for success. So a lot of times that means that I'm traveling in not for the benefit of my team, not so that they can get FaceTime with me, but so that I can share their needs or their wins or other accomplishments. with other executives in the company so that I'm making sure I'm putting the career path out there for them as well. I think as a woman, I do have a predominantly female team. And, I always try to make sure that I'm thinking about their career path as well as my own. And so for that, I think, just really one thing I've always heard is don't bring someone up to your senior leadership for the first time when you're starting to talk about wanting to get them a promotion or a raise or something. You've got to set that stage and be talking about the people that you're trying to elevate in your company regularly. And for all the other leaders out there, I think that's especially true for women in your company and young women in your company, that you need to be sure that you're bringing those names up to others on a regular basis so that you're setting up those milestones for the rest of your team as well.
I love that you brought up cameras. I have a camera on policy with my team. I think we try to instate that across the board. And I love it because I do think it makes you more engaged. And I do want to be able to see what those cues are. I want to see how you're feeling. I'll also ask my team, at the end of a meeting, I'll say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you feeling about this? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel, like you have enough information to move forward? If you don't, let's pause. Let's, have another touch base. But I do think in a virtual world, it's very easy just to turn your camera off, to put the meeting on mute and just go about your business and do other things. And I'm definitely a fan for, I'm only going to invite you to the meeting if I think that you have a meaningful place in the meeting, and I want to know what you think, and I want to see your face.
Yeah, we're in the office 3 days, work from home 2 days. And I think what's just been critical as we've transitioned into the return to office is retaining the good, retaining the flexibility, the understanding that there's life as well that needs to be managed. And that goes for everybody, men, women. Sometimes you got to work from home for a day because that's what makes sense for your life. So making sure that we remember that we are managing humans with complete lives has been really important. At the same time, I think being back in the office has been great. We've been back for just over a year, and just the being able to have the quick conversations, real time, even cutting down on, instead of having a meeting, like, hey, I'm going to stop by this person's desk. We're going to talk for 5 minutes. We've got it solved. So I think having the kind of the best of both. But as managers and people leaders, remembering that we have to grant our teams grace and know that for them to perform at work the way they need to, they also have to be able to manage and perform at home as well.
Especially now, especially in the summer, right? Who started summer camps already?
It's trouble when school's out. I don't know how people do it. But I think that's a perfect transition into just speaking about, overarching work-life balance. Again, I mean, women are managing large teams globally. Also, you have a life outside of that. I mean, we had discussions just about how to manage work-life balance, and especially in a remote world where flexibility is becoming key. And as you're even hiring teams, flexibility is something that often people are looking for. So just kind of love to hear your thoughts on how you are managing work-life balance. And Katie, I'll let you take that away with.
Yeah, so I'm going to get super, super real here. Every single woman I know, regardless of industry, regardless of what company they're in, are hanging on by their fingernails. And so I think this idea of work-life balance is one other thing that is put on women's to-do list. Pack your lunch, schedule your doctor's appointments, plan your family vacation, coordinate all the camps, achieve work-life balance. It's this nirvana of work-life balance. I don't believe it exists. And you can go seek for it in different companies, in different industries, but fundamentally, for me, what has worked for me, I have a 5-year-old at home. He's amazing. Dealing with all the camp juggling, childcare, etc. Is knowing what matters to you, what your rules are that you need to have in order to make your life work. It's not your work life, it's life. And so for me, I either drop off my son or pick him up every day. And to do that, that means I have to coordinate meetings sometimes. I make sure that I'm at every single one of his school events that's important. I'm really lucky that I have a boss that empowers me to be able to do that, and a team that also supports that as well. They know that 5:15, when I'm picking up my son, I'm out the door. I can take a call from the car. I will get back online at home, but otherwise, everyone knows that I'm gone then. So I think we need to shift the conversation away from putting work-life balance as one more thing on women's to-do list and talk about prioritization and adhering to those priorities and finding an environment that will support you in achieving those priorities. I had a I had a heart-to-heart with one of the fabulous women in my organization, and she was like, "You look like you're all together." Like, yeah, because I got my makeup on today. Here, I'm thinking about scheduling all of the appointments and getting all of the things done that also have to get done. And so I think it's also recognizing that how we show up at work is one thing, but remembering that for all of us, there's something else going on, whether you have kids, whether you have parents that have health issues, whether you've got a dog that has a health issue, that all matters and that's all important. It's not just parents, it's everybody. And so for the one bit of advice is know what that is for you and communicate that. Nobody bats an eye when I leave at 5:15. I went to my son's pre-K graduation and everyone's like, send pictures. So that's great that I have that supportive environment to be in. And if you're in an environment that's not, then it's not you that's the problem, it's the environment.
Katie, that's such a great point. And, I think we've probably all heard the agency maxim, like good, fast, or cheap. You can pick two. I think for women that there's kind of a new maxim, right? You can have career, you can have family, you can have an organized and well-decorated home, you can have a social life, you could have, health and fitness, you could have political and charitable activity, but you can still only pick two, right? You can pick different things on different days that you're going to exceed or try to excel at, but there's just not enough hours in the day. And if you are trying to achieve all of those things every single day, you're probably not going to find that you're driving towards your own happiness. You're trying to make a lot of other people happy for what you think is expected of this kind of ideal woman. So I like that. Just remember, you only have to pick two. Whatever you're juggling, it's okay to drop some of the balls some of the time.
I agree with that. You can't be awesome at everything all the time. And I think that we've kind of made a little bit of a joke of it, but sometimes you're killing it at work and you're not killing it at home. And sometimes you're killing it at home and not at work. And I think, exactly what Katie said, just setting boundaries and it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I can't do that today. And I'm with you. I prioritize the things that I want to do for my family. And I make time in the evening or when I need to revisit it. And I make sure that my team knows, I'll be available to you. But between this time and this time, I have my kids' graduation or whatever it is. So, and I do think, your organization that you're with should really be supportive of you in that. Because we talk about work-life flexibility, but it's really like life-work flexibility. Like we work to live. We don't live to work. So I think that, we're all fortunate that we can enjoy what we do, but it doesn't mean that it needs to take the place of, your own happiness.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd add, I completely agree with everything that's been said. I think it really also comes down to culture, like we said, and making sure that people know, like, hey, how you're feeling is important. Your life at home is important. And I think it's everyone's job to make sure that they're telling their teams, we care about you as a person and that these things are okay and just setting that precedent. I know in my case, I'm very lucky to have a boss who does that. That example, I had a migraine yesterday and he was like, please rest first. Shout out to Greg over here. But I mean, just go Greg. But really just hearing that from him, like, actually, thank you, because I had a million meetings. I was very stressed. I felt terrible. But even just small things like that, I'm like, okay, when I need to put personal matters first, that's okay. And I think doing that and making sure that we continue to do that for everyone else is so important and just really gets everyone's minds right for, doing that for one another.
And if you find that you don't have that support and you don't have that culture, I think there's a couple things. One is understanding if that is actually the place that you want to continue your career. That's one reason that you may want to look elsewhere. And if not, then at least please don't put out a Women's History Month campaign if you're not going to support your women employees. Like rethink your women's targeting. Just thinking about how you're showing up authentically, to your point earlier, as a company and as a brand, and whether you're able to reflect that in your policies towards your employees.
Yeah, I think it's more important than ever. I mean, you mentioned Greg. Shout out to Greg again. Great job. But yeah, exactly. But it's building strong support systems around you. I mean, it takes a village. They say that. I mean, careers and motherhood and everything else. But let's just love to hear your final thoughts about how you guys have maintained a strong support system throughout your careers.
Wow, that's a big one.
Branding strong.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's, surrounding yourself with people that you trust, people that, you understand their motivation, you understand what their boundaries are, you understand their work style, and, finding people that you're aligned with. I think that, when you are interviewing, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. So you can get an idea of what the culture of an organization is by the folks that you're talking to. And I also think I've been very blessed in my relationship with my leader just over time because I've known her for a huge bulk of my career and we've gone through different iterations of jobs together. She was my client when I was at an agency for years and years. Now, we're in a different work environment at Southwest, but, I love it. I trust her. I know where she stands, and so I've really made it a point to try to align myself with people that I feel support my values. And I think I would just add to that also, giving your teams the ability to grow. They will become your peers, often sooner than you even realize. One of the great joys of my career is seeing people that I used to manage now leading areas of marketing at many companies represented here today, in fact. And so then you have a whole new peer set that you can bounce ideas off of and things like that. I would also just say events like this one. One of the things I love about Brand Innovators is they never waste my time. As you get to be a more senior marketer, there's going to be so many demands of, do you want to come to this conference? Like, we'll fly you to this. Do you want to do it? And I end up saying no to so many of those because I feel like they end up not being a great use of our time. So I really appreciate the networking opportunities that do allow senior marketers to connect in a really authentic way and have prioritized those over other opportunities that are much more sales pitchy. Yeah, I would say just, again, today, so wonderful. I see all these familiar faces out there, and they all stem from my work experience at one company, or most of them. And so I think keeping that those networks alive, even if you haven't spoken to somebody in 5 years, that's okay. But continuing to have those sounding boards across industry. One of my best friends works in the White House, and she's doing something completely different from what I'm doing, and yet she's one of my go-tos when I need advice about something. So having that personal board of advisors, and you think about how to work through things on your team, in your life, in your career, is really important. And then I've been so lucky to have worked for some of the best. They just happen to be women managers in my career. Currently at Samsung for my Frito-Lay days, you'll hear from one, actually both of them later today. And so if you can, if you're so privileged, pick your boss very, very selectively, that they're, to the point, aligned with your values, your purpose, and they're there to be your biggest advocates and sponsors, not just in the current company, but as you go on.
I agree with it all. I'll hand it back.
Perfect. And I think we're at time. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but are you all sticking around for the networking break? You want to continue conversations about women in leadership? I'm sure they'd be happy to continue. So thank you guys so much.